From Jordan Woolmer, whose Rolexes, supercars, and $2,200 Salt Bae dinner helped prove he was living on drug money, to Ryan Wedding, the former Olympian whose most famous luxury flex wasn't even real, these 6 men became symbols of criminals undone by showing off. Jordan Woolmer. Jordan Woolmer wanted every head on the street to turn when he passed, so he bought himself a Bentley and a Lamborghini. And turn they did. Mind you, this was Kettering, a quiet corner of Northamptonshire where most people were perfectly happy living moderate lives without all the flashiness. A Bentley rolling through town was a scene on its own. At 28, unless you were a footballer, royalty, born into money, or one of those early crypto investors, there weren't many believable ways to afford cars like that. Jordan was none of those things. He made his money moving cocaine and cannabis across the county, and because being that rich at that age wasn't enough, Wulmer wanted the whole world to watch him stunt. He filmed every part of his lifestyle. For the net worth stands scrolling through his Instagram, the full catalog was right there, page after page of designer clothes, jewelry, high-end cars, and a Rolex catching the light in every second frame, worth around £12,500. The man even traveled to London and dropped more than £1,200 in cash on a single meal at Salt Bae's steakhouse. The gold leaf theater, the expensive cuts, the entire spectacle, and of course he posted that too, because a £1,200 dinner nobody sees might as well never have happened. At first, the Instagram page only proved that Wulmer was spending serious money. It didn't prove where that money came from. That changed when his BMW was pulled over during a routine stop in Victoria Gardens, Northampton. Inside, officers found 450 grams of cannabis, 83 grams of cocaine, and £7,000 in cash that was suddenly going to need an explanation. That traffic stop gave police the loose thread, and once they started pulling, Wulmer's entire lifestyle began to unravel. Investigators forensically linked him to £14,000 recovered from a property in Leicester and half a kilo of cocaine stored in a unit over in Rutland. Over the course of the investigation, the recovery sheet grew to a kilo of cocaine, another half kilo of cannabis, £57,000 in cash, and nearly £35,000 worth of clothing. When officers took Wulmer into custody, they also lifted the £12,500 Rolex straight from his wrist and logged it as another purchase funded by his criminal lifestyle. For 4 years, an organized crime team built its case against him, piece by piece. During that time, officers described Wulmer as a man living far beyond his legal means who just couldn't resist boasting about his luxurious lifestyle online. And that stunning eventually came back to bite him. Every car, watch, designer outfit, and expensive dinner gave detectives another example of how freely he was spending his drug money. The Instagram account Wulmer treated like a trophy cabinet became a running inventory of his criminal proceeds. When officers pulled him in again during the spring of 2024, that arrest turned up another 500 grams of cocaine and £16,000 in cash. One more brick in a wall investigators had spent 4 years building around him. His courier, a younger man named Kasper Brzezinski, folded early and received a suspended sentence for helping move the drugs and hold the dirty cash. Wulmer took his chances with a jury, but they convicted him of supplying Class A and Class B drugs and benefiting from the proceeds. The sentence landed hard, 10 years and 6 months in prison. He also received a concurrent sentence of 1 year and 10 months for breaching a suspended sentence, another 3 months for driving while disqualified, and a 7-year driving ban waiting for him when he eventually gets out. Wulmer spent years flexing in broad daylight, and the daylight was exactly where they caught him. The next man thought he was flexing in the dark. Moody. Stephen Moody thought he had solved the problem that hangs over every dealer who likes nice things. How do you enjoy the money without advertising the crime? At 32, he took a more subtle approach. Moody was a mid-level software operator who sold to other dealers rather than standing out on corners himself. And I mean, this man was moving some serious weight, at least 5 kilos of high-purity cocaine, selling for around 40,000 pounds a kilo. The man even tried to hide his footprints. He met buyers and suppliers in the least glamorous places imaginable. Retail park car parks scattered around Salford and Manchester. No Salt Bae, no Lamborghini parked outside the club, and no stupid Instagram page showing the police what his drug money had bought him. However, no matter how carefully you stay off the investigation radar, there's no way you're pushing hundreds of thousands of pounds in cocaine without developing at least a small taste for the nice stuff. And Steve's taste was anything but small. At his home on Ordsall Lane, he had a wardrobe worth around 100,000 pounds, filled with enough Gucci, Dior, Louis Vuitton, and Givenchy to make fashion models wet. Gold watches, jewelry stacked up, and roughly 20,000 pounds in cash sitting around the property. The man might have avoided Instagram, but he was still flexing like every other person on this list. The difference was where he showed it. Moody lived his second life on EncroChat, the encrypted phone network that the criminal underworld treated like a sealed room. For some reason, criminals genuinely seemed to believe that whatever they said and whatever they sent through the network would remain locked away from every police force on Earth. So Moody created the alias Fake Hippo and started talking freely about his exploits. He discussed deals, showed off his lifestyle, and even shared photographs of the blocks of cocaine moving through his hands. However, you know how the internet goes. You think you're anonymous until the government actually wants to find you. Moody's sealed room came open when French investigators cracked the encryption behind EncroChat. The National Crime Agency turned that breakthrough into Operation Venetic, one of the largest law enforcement operations the country had ever run. Greater Manchester's organized crime detectives sat down with the download and trawled through more than 30,000 lines of chat. Somewhere inside all that noise was the man behind Fake Hippo, and they started putting the pieces together. Cell site analysis placed his handset exactly where his messages said it should be. Personal details buried inside the conversations matched a real life in Salford. The forensic work even pulled up the photographs of cocaine blocks that had been sent to him, still there, still evidence. Fake Hippo stopped being a ghost and became Stephen Moody of Ordsall Lane. Moody managed to stay ahead of the police for almost a year after that. But while driving a black Volkswagen Polo along Regent Road, an officer clocked him, followed him, and pulled him over a short distance away. That was the end of Fake Hippo. Moody pleaded guilty and received 10 years in prison. The detective on the case described him as a man who had carried out a prolific and sustained period of high-level dealing that flooded the area with Class A drugs. And he wasn't the only one left standing in the wreckage of Operation Venetic. One of the men he dealt alongside, known on the network as Big Tyson, received more than 16 years for conspiracies stretching from cocaine to firearms. Moody was only one face among more than 200 people swept up in the Manchester arm of that single operation, a dragnet that pulled in millions of pounds in cash, close to a dozen firearms, and tens of kilos of drugs, all off the back of the same crack network. Moody flexed in the one place he was sure nobody could see. He just didn't know the walls were made of glass. The next man built his glass house in Dubai, James Harding. James Harding took the same bet Moody took and raised it into the millions. He was 34 out of Alton in Hampshire, but you'd never have found him there because Harding ran his life from Dubai, dressed up as a high-end luxury watch executive, the perfect cover for a man who had a genuine reason to be around expensive things and expensive people. His EncroChat handle was the Top King, and alongside his loyal right-hand man, Jay's Karudi, he ran a cocaine importation empire with a scale that's hard to hold in your head. Across roughly 10 weeks in the spring of 2020, the two of them oversaw around 50 separate importations, close to a ton of cocaine coming into the United Kingdom, and the profit off that 10-week run came to about 5 million pounds. The reporting put tens of millions of pounds of product moving through their hands, and every account of it lands on the same picture of the man at the top, a villa in one of Dubai's most exclusive districts, 5-star hotels, a Bugatti and a Lamborghini in the rotation, and stacks of banknotes photographed the way other people photograph their holidays. The flex was real and the money was real, and if the story ended, their Harding would be the perfect poster boy for this whole video. What the encrypted messages showed, though, ran a lot colder than a supercar. Harding and Karudi sat on that network and calmly planned a murder, working out how to recruit and arm a hitman to put a rival courier out of business for good, arranging a gun and ammunition for the job they called the Full M. And Harding put in writing exactly how he kept people in line, spelling out that you find out where a rival's grandmother lives because everyone loves their nan, and the threat of granny catching a bullet keeps a man obedient. That is the mind the encryption was hiding. Karudi matched him for it, threatening to have a man's head split open behind bars if he ever went to the police. 3 more members of the group had already admitted their own drug offenses by the time the 2 of them stood trial, the lower rungs of a ladder these men sat at the very top of. The encryption is the whole story of how they got him, and it wasn't the supercars that did it. Once the French broke EncroChat and passed the data on, the Metropolitan Police worked through thousands of the pair's messages, and the case they built stood on what those messages said: the importations, the plot, the threats, rather than on any photograph of a Bugatti. The judge said it plainly when he handed down the sentence, telling Harding that without the benefit of EncroChat, your scale of offending would never have been apparent. They caught up with Harding physically at Geneva Airport, walked him off, and extradited him, an officer greeting him by name as they took him. A quiet welcome back for a man who'd assumed Dubai had put him out of everyone's reach. They pulled Karudi back out of Turkey to stand beside him. Both drew life. Harding will serve at least 32 years, Karudi at least 26. The Dubai lifestyle made the headlines. The cracked phone made the case. Now across the Atlantic, where a man was flexing in plain sight and never once suspected the room was already wired for sound. Jimmy Majou. Jimmy Majou lived the American version of the dream the others were chasing. He was 43, out of Chino Hills in California, settled into a custom mansion worth somewhere around $2 million, and to anyone scrolling past, he looked like a self-made entrepreneur who'd simply won. Federal prosecutors tell a different version, one where Majou allegedly sat at the head of a trafficking organization that pushed large quantities of cocaine and crystal meth clear across the United States, and the method they lay out is almost mundane in its nerve. He allegedly flew down to Mexico to collect the cocaine, then shipped it around the country through an ordinary commercial parcel carrier, the same brown trucks that drop packages on every porch in America. A search warrant affidavit that ran past 100 pages, laid out stash houses and a spread of shipments touching something like 10 states, from Michigan down to Florida, and it named the people orbiting him, among them a Detroit associate and the parcel driver whose route allegedly carried the loads. Investigators say they intercepted those parcels one after another, 12 kilos pulled in St. Louis, more near Cleveland, more north of Washington, all of it allegedly moving through shipping accounts tied to a route one of his co-defendants happened to drive. And Majou, allegedly running all of this, could not keep it to himself. His Instagram was a highlight reel of the life the money bought. Shots from the backseat of a Rolls Royce, courtside at a Lakers game, the whole aspirational package. When the raid came, agents seized a white Lamborghini Urus, more than a dozen pieces of diamond jewelry, and $235,000 in cash, and the paperwork now moves to strip him of the mansion, the Lamborghini, the cash, and 18 pieces of diamond and gold. There's one post that everyone fixes on, a private jet photo he captioned, "Life not so private," and it reads now like a punchline written by the universe. It reads that way because of what he didn't know while he was posting it. The caption wasn't clever, foreshadowing that tipped anyone off. The truth runs the other way. By the time that jet photo went up, federal agents were already deep into him, and they weren't watching his feed. They were listening. A hidden microphone caught Majou talking business, complaining about a cocaine drought and the way the price had jumped when supply dried up. The kind of conversation you only have when you're certain no one is in the room. The case against him is built out of intercepted parcels, covert surveillance, and recordings of him allegedly handing over cocaine and taking back cash, plus a paper trail that allegedly ties drug proceeds to a stake in a cannabis business. That trail surfaced when investigators went into his cloud storage and pulled a letter documenting his share in a licensed dispensary, allegedly bought with money the cocaine had made, and federal drug agents, postal inspectors, and tax investigators ran the whole case together under a national anti-cartel push. His following ran past 13,000 people, an audience he kept feeding right up until the morning the arrests began. The Instagram is the irony, not the engine. He pleaded not guilty, and his case is still open, which means everything laid against him remains an allegation a jury has yet to weigh. Life Not So Private didn't get Jimmy Majou caught. The wire was already live. The next man wasn't just flexing his wealth, he was selling the redemption story to a live audience. Charles Silk Dunn. Charles Dunn had already served the longest sentence on this entire list before the alleged second act even began. Back in 1992 in Ohio, a 23-year-old Dunn went down for 30 years for running a drug operation, and he served more than 20 of them, walking out around 2015 as a man in his 50s with a story to tell. And what a story he built. Dunn reinvented himself as a motivational speaker and author down in Fayetteville, Georgia, 30 miles outside Atlanta, billing himself as a life coach who'd gone from prisoner to change maker, publishing a memoir and a 4-volume series, pulling book endorsements from the rapper Master P and the actor Anthony Anderson, and reposting an article that floated whether his long imprisonment made him America's answer to Nelson Mandela. He filmed himself touring his enormous home for his followers, telling them that after all the years of suffering, he now woke up living like this because the God he served gives you double for your trouble. People pay for resorts to glimpse what he claimed to see every single morning. Prosecutors say the whole redemption was a costume worn over the same old business. In their telling, Dunn, 57 now, named in a federal affidavit only as a co-conspirator, allegedly led a Georgia trafficking organization that moved massive quantities of cocaine, as much as 100 kilos at a time, allegedly sourced through a Bahamian supplier capable of feeding Metro Atlanta on a scale worth a fortune per shipment. His alleged lieutenant, a man they call Shorty, had once had a cocaine sentence commuted by a sitting American president, and prosecutors say he came right back to the trade beside Dunn. The Bahamian supplier at the top of that pipeline got dragged out of the sea by the U.S. military after his plane went down off the coast of Florida, and the wreck of that flight is what began spilling names into the open. Dunn's own wife is tangled in the allegations, and of the 20 people charged across the scheme, most have already pleaded guilty. And when investigators raided the 8-bedroom, $1.4 million house with the pool that they say drug money paid for, the inventory read nothing like a life coach's estate: a Lamborghini worth around $250,000, a Cadillac Escalade, a Mercedes AMG GT, a diamond-encrusted Rolex packed with 25 carats, gold Cuban links, more diamond pieces. Alongside the jewelry sat cocaine, heroin, fentanyl, methamphetamine, 14 phones, a pistol, bank accounts holding $653,000, roughly $120,000 in cash at the house, and another $270,000 at an associate's, and a handwritten note in the main bedroom dated to the summer of 2023 that simply read, "I have $10 million. Now hold the obvious thought, because the flaunting is what makes this case unforgettable, but the flaunting is not what caught him. There's nothing to suggest his Instagram tipped anyone off. The mansion tours and the Mandela reposts sit as pure irony beside how the law actually reached him. A long multi-agency federal investigation that allegedly ran undercover sources on Bahamian soil for at least 3 years. Patient work that had nothing to do with a phone screen. At a bail hearing, the prosecution argued he was doing the same thing he'd always done, and that trafficking is how he funds the lifestyle. And the judge, refusing to release him, noted that all those years already spent in prison had not deterred the man in the least. Dunn denies all of it and is awaiting trial, so every word of it stands as allegation for now. The motivational speaker preaching that suffering earns you a blessing, while allegedly running a cocaine pipeline the whole time. And yet, the biggest name on this list belongs to a man whose most famous flex was never even real. Ryan Wedding. Ryan Wedding started his life in the light in a way none of the others could dream of, standing at the top of an Olympic run. Born in Thunder Bay, Ontario, into a family soaked in skiing and mountains, he made Canada's national team as a teenager, took junior world medals, and carried his country's flag into the 2002 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City, competing in the parallel giant slalom and finishing 24th before he walked away from the sport for good. What he walked toward is the reason the FBI now knows his name. After a marijuana growing operation and then a 2008 cocaine sting that put him away for 4 years, Wedding got out around 2011 and allegedly went on to build a transnational cocaine empire, one that authorities say moved on the order of 60 metric tons of cocaine a year and generated more than $1 billion annually, allegedly operating under the protection of Mexico's most powerful cartel. They knew him by a whole shelf of nicknames: El Jefe, Giant, Public Enemy, the vocabulary of a man who traveled a long way from a national ski team. Long before any of it, back in his snowboarding afterlife, police had raided a warehouse farm holding nearly 7,000 cannabis plants tied to him and walked away without enough to charge him, an early lesson in how slippery he'd proved to be. The FBI director reached for the only comparison big enough, calling Wedding a modern-day iteration of Pablo Escobar. Prosecutors also charge him with orchestrating murders, including the killing of a witness who'd agreed to cooperate. The deaths laid at his feet include a married couple and another man, allegedly ordered from a distance alongside a Canadian co-accused. The human cost that turned a trafficking file into a manhunt. They put him on the 10 most wanted list and raised the reward on his head to $15 million. Then, in January of 2026, the flex arrived. An Instagram account surfaced under a handle built from his name, and it was everything a fugitive drug lord's account should be. Motorcycles, expensive watches, a jewel-encrusted snowboarder pendant tying the whole legend together, and a man who looked just like Wedding climbing aboard a helicopter over a caption bragging about the perks of being the boss. It pulled in more than 44,000 followers almost overnight. It was catnip, the perfect ending to the story, the untouchable kingpin taunting the world while the FBI chased his tail. And it was fake. Every image on that account was AI generated. The whole thing an imposter, a machine flexing on behalf of a ghost. The viral flex the internet devoured wasn't Ryan Wedding at all. The real man was undone by something with no glamour in it whatsoever. A grinding international manhunt that ran across the United States, Mexico, Canada, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic for over a year, closing every road until on the night of the 22nd of January 2026, Wedding ended up in custody in Mexico City. Investigators framed it as a man finally turning himself in. His own lawyer insists he was taken against his will. Either way, the operation that closed around him had already made dozens of arrests, and one agent summed up the whole arc of the fall, from carving powder on an Olympic slope to allegedly moving powder by the ton. He was flown to California, pleaded not guilty to 17 felony counts spanning drug trafficking, murder conspiracy, and witness tampering, and now faces the possibility of the rest of his life behind bars. The one name on this list that the whole world would recognize, the man built for exactly this video, and his showing off caught nobody because his most famous post was a lie a computer told about him, which leaves us with the honest scoreboards. So line them up from the man the flexing truly sank to the man it barely touched, and the picture gets clear. Number one is Jordan Woolmer, the only clean case in the set, the man whose Instagram bragging a detective named out loud as central to bringing him down. Every watch and supercar and gold leaf dinner folded straight into the proof that he lived on crime. Number two is Stephen Moody, who flexed his 100,000-pound wardrobe and his gold on a phone he believed was sealed, so that when EncroChat cracked, his own trophies helped identify him. Number three is James Harding, whose Dubai supercars filled the headlines, while the cracked encryption, the messages, the plot, the threats, did the actual work of putting him away for life. Number four is Charles Dunn, whose mansion tours and redemption sermons are the loudest irony of them all, and whose alleged undoing came from 3 years of undercover federal work that owed nothing to a screen. Number five is Jimmy Majou, posting from private jets while a hidden microphone, not a follower, quietly gathered the case the prosecution now carries. And number six is Ryan Wedding, the biggest name and the emptiest claim, a man caught by a manhunt across 5 countries, while the flex that made him famous turned out to be a fake. Here's what the scoreboard actually teaches, and it's more useful than the myth. The flexing rarely pulls the trigger by itself. What it does is decorate a case the law is already building, hand the prosecution a signed confession of income that no honest story can cover, turn a suspicion into a certainty. The watches and the supercars and the stacks of cash aren't usually the reason these men get caught. They're the reason nobody in the courtroom has any doubt once they are. The tell was never the money. It was the need to be seen holding it.